Welcome back, movie lover badasses, for part 2 of our Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3 prequel trilogy review. Today we're going to talk about Attack of the Clones. And again, I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was like, yay, the first movie was good back
Not
in the day.
I, sir.
Back in the day, I'm talking, back in the day, coming off the high, that was the first film. I was still kind of like, I enjoyed it in theater at the time. Okay, so I was really excited when I saw the trailer for Attack of the Clones. I was like, wow, look at all these cool special effects. Oh, man, is that Boba Fett? No, it's not Boba Fett. Okay, but it still looks like Boba Fett, but whatever. But, oh, man, it looks like Samuel Jackson's finally doing something. He's finally throwing down. This looks cool. There's tons of Jedi running around with tons of lightsabers. Oh, man, I can't wait to see this. And then I went and saw the movie. Oh, I think the empty, hollow feeling, this is the film that started it. I was liking it, I was watching it in theater, and then something started to twist. I started to sink down in my seat a little bit, and I knew something was wrong.
I actually was working at the time, and I didn't do a lot of movie going back in the day. I was more for waiting for it to come out on DVD, and I never saw Attack of the Clones in the theater.
You're lucky.
I jumped the gun, and I was just like, hey, you know what? I've got Phantom Menace. I just bought Phantom Menace on DVD. I hadn't seen it in a while. I'm like, why not? It's Phantom Menace on what? Why not? And Attack of the Clones came out. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll snag that up. And I popped it into my DVD player that I had bought on my own. Woohoo! My first DVD player.
Woo!
On my 27-inch bubble Sanyo TV. And couldn't finish the film. I had to turn it off. I got really bored. I got really tired. I turned it off, and I'm like, well, that's a little weird. Okay. Came back to it the next day and finished it. I'm like, what the hell was that? Okay, maybe it was just me. Couple years later, Revenge of the Sith is about to come out. So I rewatched Attack of the Clones to familiarize myself with what the hell's going on. The same damn thing happened. I could not finish this film in one sitting to save my life. And right off the bat, we are thrown headfirst into quite possibly one of the most unconvincing and bland love stories ever portrayed, big screen or little screen. And once again, Lucas's lack of care for actor direction painfully shines through. And this is where I feel a lot of time was wasted in episode 1. Not only should Anakin have been older in the first film, and thus have been portrayed by the same actor in all 3 films, Anakin and Padme needed much more time to kind of bond, to establish a genuine bond between the two of them. They needed more time in episode 1 so that we could actually follow them more smoothly into episode 2 and then episode 3. The 10-year gap was jarring for the audience, for me in particular. I don't know if you felt the same way at all. By the time we meet up with these two characters again, we basically have to relearn who Anakin is. Padme doesn't even recognize him at first. And all we're left with throughout the film are Anakin's rape eyes, Padme's bitch attitude, and dialogue cornier than a farmer's crop! Dear God! And the plot, once again, is overly complicated and simultaneously dumb with virtually no action to speak of.
So, I get the gist, okay, out of the whole trilogy that George Lucas is mostly trying to focus on the origin of Vader, okay? This is the meat of the story for all 3 films. And it could have been so awesome, it could have been so good, you set up the characters, you show their relationships, okay? You let the audience get to know these characters, so when the shit hits the fan later and the tragedy happens, it's mind-blowing. It's Game of Thrones mind-blowing. I mean, it's just like, oh shit, we feel crushed. We feel hurt, we feel sad, we feel so sorry and bad for the characters involved. And I think that's what George Lucas was trying to do. he just completely epically failed in doing so. And here's a good example. This film kind of sets up the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, he is the master, Anakin's the apprentice. And it's one of those things where show don't tell. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, yeah, remember the time when I was getting attacked by some parsecs or something like that, and then something, and yeah, I remember that time, Master. I had to rescue you that time. And it's just kind of like, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no other history or anything cool they could have shown. No bond.
No, that was probably the greatest failing between Obi-Wan and Anakin, was there was no bond. The way older Obi-Wan described young Anakin Skywalker to Luke Skywalker was he was a very great friend, and you believed him.
Yeah.
Never once in episodes 2 or 3 do you really feel that Anakin is anything other than an embarrassment and an irritation to Obi-Wan, as hard as Ewan McGregor tries otherwise to portray everything. He has virtually nothing to work with. Anakin is one of the most unsympathetic and unlikable characters throughout all 3 films. I hate to say it, but at least you kind of feel for him a little bit in the first one.
Yeah, a little.
Maybe.
Because he's a kid and he doesn't know any better.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But by the second one, he's this whiny little petulant brat. And by the third one, he's a whiny petulant adult.
Mm-hmm. And watch Ewan McGregor's face. Watch Obi-Wan Kenobi's face, especially through the second film. He looks like, we're supposed to be Jedi. We're supposed to be kind of like almost monkish, religious in a way, where we're supposed to set the standard on what's good in the world, basically, and we're knights. We protect the innocent. But look at his face. He's just basically like, what? He's like Anakin's being a dick. You can tell Obi-Wan Kenobi's just like, man, I'm about to bust your ass, Anakin. Hey, Anakin, do me a favor. Just look over there for a second.
And another probably often touched on subject is the forbidden love aspect of this. I to an extent, I suppose I can understand why it's not a good idea that the Jedi are allowed to have relationships and allowed to have love in their lives. If they are supposed to be more monkish, then that means you need to put aside your own needs and you need to focus on the needs of those around you. And you can't do that when you're sitting there worrying about your wife and your children or whatever, or if you're a female, your husband and your children or whatever. You can't have that distraction in your life if you want to devote yourself to the Force and to the good of the Republic, those around, whatever. So, to an extent, I suppose I can understand that. But as far as Padme goes, why can't a senator have a relationship with somebody? You mean to tell me that those thousands upon thousands of galactic representatives have no families? None of those senators have any kin to speak of? That's a lot of damn people who've chosen to be celibate for the sake of politics. How many politicians do you know that don't have families? 0 sense there. And I have to love the obvious cock tease that Padme is.
Blue balls.
She wears some of the most revealing and provocative outfits around Anakin, who has been giving her rape eyes this whole time. Yeah. And she knows that he wants her, so why is she wearing these backless gowns and these
midriff,
little midriff and these the most provocative gowns you could possibly imagine? Each scene she's wearing less and less. But I'm a senator. You can't fall in love with me, and I can't fall in love with you because I'm a senator.
But dear God, horrible, painful dialogue. Why is young Darth Vader? Why is he talking about he doesn't like sand? It feels all weird and it gets everywhere. Why is that? Why are they having brunch? They're having brunch, and he's using the Force to bring the fruit over, and she bites it, and immediately right after that, they're sitting by the fireplace, like literally right after, and we're romantic now, but nothing led up to romantic time. There was no attraction between both of them that was on equal lengths. He had rapey eyes. Every scene they were in together was very uncomfortable.
It was.
It was very awkward. Every single scene they were together. And then we finally have this nice, fun brunch time, you know, and then literally right after that, the next shot is them by the fireplace. It's romantic Lifetime channel time. And we're sitting there like, oh, dude, this is so painful. And then no one talks like this. I don't even think with some of the romantic films out there, they don't even talk like this in these movies.
They wouldn't if they know what's good for them.
Yeah, no one talks like this. Okay, I don't care if it's reality or space opera. No one talks like this. When they mention lines like, "You are in my very soul, taunting me. I can't handle it."
I love you, Annie. I truly, deeply love you. And we had another wasted opportunity in an interesting character somewhat in Jango Fett, who's kind of Jango Fett Prime, who is the father, sort of, to the clone of himself, of Boba Fett. George Lucas, you've done it again. Another irritating as hell child actor.
Dead! Fire!
Adds absolutely nothing to the film. And the story is so secondary. The whole premise behind Jango Fett is that they use his DNA to create this clone army, and he is a bounty hunter, and he has his little mini-me next to him. And by the time Jango Fett dies, and Boba Fett picks up his helmet, and it's supposed to be this moment of, oh shit, it's the origins of Boba Fett. We don't get too close, and something happened in Attack of the Clones that is kind of very telling of what ended up becoming as a whole George Lucas's reimagining of Star Wars. And you can see what he did in the original trilogy, and you can really see it take hold in Attack of the Clones. These ugly, artificial worlds that are just so clean. They in an attempt to look busy and bustling, they look so phony, and the stakes never feel high because you never once believe that these people are in peril. All you see are these people who are on a green screen, surrounded by mats that they could fall onto, with wires attached to them. You can nearly see the wires. You can't see them, but your brain can, because the processing, the environments are just so false. And there was just too much thrown at you in these films, and you can never really get into the story because he's trying to throw so much garbage at you visually, and you kind of lose track of what you're really supposed to be caring about. At least that was my perspective.
So going back to episode 1's finale, okay, was it overly bloated? Yes. Did we have to, show the spaceship battle and then show the Gungans, the Gungans with Jar Jar versus the droid battle, and then we have the Princess Amidala and her troops doing her thing, and then we got to cut to Darth Maul fighting the other Jedi. Was it bloated? Yes. But at least the Darth Maul fight was entertaining. What the fuck happened in this movie? What happened? We get this really cool, martial arts fight choreography for our lightsaber battles, and what the hell happened? The lightsaber battles in this movie were boring. Oh my god, they were boring. I mean, Samuel Jackson looked awkward, he looked awkward. It was just so boring in comparison to what we were shown with the previous movie. And it is not just the lightsaber battles. There were action sequences throughout this film that were just boring. The car chase when they were going after the assassin, that was just too long and boring. The stupid droid manufacturing factory sequence that looked like Super Mario Brothers or something. I mean, it was just boring. Like, why are we here? Let's do something else. Let's go somewhere else. Let's see something more interesting. I think the only part that was interesting in this movie was when they were all chained up to the pillars and the monsters came out, the alien monsters, and they didn't have their lightsabers, so they had to use their wits and skill to kind of get out of that. I mean, that was like the only time in the whole movie where it was like, okay, we have a little bit of suspense here, maybe a little bit of tension. But that didn't take long because they grabbed their lightsabers and then they were cutting down stupid droids again. But what the hell happened? And, I love Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee's the shit, all right? He's the man, but completely wasted as this Dooku character, okay? But, man, it's boring fight duel with him and Anakin. First, with him and Obi-Wan, that was boring. Okay, and then after that, when Anakin grabs the two lightsabers and he's fighting with the two lightsabers, and I was just like this in the theater, I was like, all right, here we go. Oh, that's how quickly it just went from interesting to note boring. And we're just going to cut to shots of them close up. And we're just going to show the lightsaber fight going like this. Cut to Dooku. That was, what happened? What happened? They fired the previous fight choreographer? What the hell happened?
They ran out of choreography.
Which brings me to this scene, which is utter ridiculous. But I was so desperate for some type of entertainment. I was just like in the theater, like, oh, yeah, something, thank God. And that's the ridiculous Yoda Jedi Master pulling out a little rinky-dink lightsaber doing martial art poses. Okay, Yoda, that I know, he's the shit. He doesn't need to do all that stuff. He just lifts up X-Wings out of the water and puts it down there to show how much of the shit he is and show the power. He doesn't have to whip out this 3-inch little rinky-dink lightsaber and just... Okay, he didn't have to do all that. But dear God, I was so bored with the lightsaber fight choreography that seeing little Yoda flipping around and doing all this stuff, I was just like, oh God, thank God, something.
And we are probably grasping at straws here, but we want
Yes.
you to find a little bit of good in this one as well. It's very difficult, believe me. This is probably one of the hardest sit-throughs I've had in a while for a film. John Williams, once again, attempts to salvage the film by creating a beautiful love theme. I don't like the love story, but the love theme itself is both romantic, unfortunately, and ominous. Another kind of good point, I guess. You gotta take what you get. Even though he was replaced by the very unfunny C-3PO, I have never found C-3PO more annoying than in Attack of the Clones. Jar Jar Binks is reduced to a bare minimum character with maybe 3 speaking roles, but we get our classic line of "Hello, Felligans!" And, so even though he is reduced in character, he is actually the deciding vote that votes Senator Palpatine into absolute power.
Thanks, Jar Jar.
Good job.
Thank you.
And as he was talking about, another good point, even though he was completely underutilized in both films, Christopher Lee was, as always, the badass old pro, showing everyone how it's done by, at the very least, commanding a presence. Mm-hmm. When Christopher Lee is on the screen, he could be in the biggest pile of shit film, and he has...
Yes.
Damn it, Christopher. He was in some pretty big shit, but... You know, if it's Christopher Lee, it's Christopher Lee. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Which now brings us to the best part of the movie. Definitely, in our opinion, is when Anakin goes to rescue his mother. Okay? It begs the question again, did George Lucas go have another restroom break and have somebody else come in and edit that scene? Because it just seems so out of place. It's almost like, is this another movie now? Because it's so good. Unfortunately, it's so damn short, but it was definitely a compelling scene.
Anakin... He's been away for 10 years, and as you might remember from The Phantom Menace, him and his mom were both slaves on Tatooine, and he was actually freed after the pod race sequence, and he went off for 10 years to train to be a Jedi, and he kept having nightmares that his mom was dying. So he goes back to Tatooine because he's like really afraid. He wants to find out that she's okay. Finds out that she was kidnapped by the Sand People, and for some reason, why the Sand People want a human female? Why do so many people speculate that she was raped by the Sand People? I've heard that theory. I can't imagine why, but by the time he comes across her, she's clearly been beaten the shit out of. And she basically dies in his arms. And
begins.
We get the making, we get basically the true origins of Darth Vader. He snaps and he... Mostly by implication, but we do get a quick couple of decapitations.
But his face
He
and the
slaughters
music.
the entire group of Sand People that were holding his mother hostage. And it was a great scene, but like he said, it was very short, and it ended with him whining and crying, basically confessing to Padme that he killed everyone, and Padme's response was,
I killed all of them! I killed all of them! I even slaughtered the children!
let's get married. Once again, another wasted opportunity. You know, poor direction, difficult, just slog to sit through of a story.
Horrible forced love story.
Terrible,
Oh.
the worst dialogue
Pain.
you're gonna hear. This is another film I will never watch again after this. It's just hard to sit through. It's a chore to sit and watch this film.
So we give Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, 2.5 out of 5 stars. All right, we're keeping this thing going. Stay tuned for our review of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.